So, Anya, you're normally behind the scenes of all of our video content, telling people all things about LISAs and financial education, etc., etc. But I wanted to talk to you about your actual story because you haven't bought yet, but I think you probably have one of the most impressive saving stories that I've ever heard. Anya saved her house deposit in 4 years.
Yeah, it was a challenge, but I'm so glad that I've now got to that milestone. I think when I started, and it was also much earlier in my career, I think it felt like such a big goal to go for, and now I've got to the other end of it. I can actually look at buying and start house hunting. It's amazing that I've actually done it.
Yeah, you've got through the grind and now you're at the exciting bit. So when you started saving, how old were you?
It was 4 years ago, so I was 22. So it was only just when I came to London, just when I started my career, and I opened a lifetime ISA, which is probably the best decision I ever made. And I actually opened a stocks and shares lifetime ISA, which I think a lot of people are quite scared about. And I don't come from a financial background. Like, I did a degree in English literature, so I didn't have any understanding of investing. It wasn't like I knew what to do going into it. But the good thing about a stocks and shares lifetime ISA is often the provider will just either have a fund or an index that you can invest in. So you don't need to know the companies that you need to invest in. You don't need to research them. You just pick something that you basically invest in lots of companies, which spreads the risk. And it also just takes the hassle out of it. I think I always thought that to start investing, you actually need to know how companies grow and how they're valued and how to find ones that are going to blow up. You don't need to do that at all. And you can see such a good return through doing that.
Yeah, it's like in films, you see whenever, unfortunately it's normally men in films, there'll be a man who's a trader, and that was, when I was younger, that was my view of what investing would be like, is like you've got this screen with all of like the buy, sell, like the green and red lines, but the reality is for most people, investing is kind of signing up to a risk profile and then letting an index kind of handle the rest, right?
Yeah, basically, and it's really nice to see the growth, and obviously your investments can go up as well as down, so you don't necessarily look what I saw in growth, someone else might see something slightly different. Obviously we had COVID, which basically meant I got in at quite a good time by pure chance. It was not strategic on my part at all, but you do see over the long term quite a lot of growth from investments in general. So if you've got like 5 years, 10 years that you're going to buy a house in, it's a good idea to consider investing. I was quite lucky that the amount that I saved and the amount that my investments grew over the 4 years meant that I could save up my house deposit earlier. And it was the best decision I've ever made. It's got me a lot more confident about investing in the future beyond just saving up my house deposit.
So obviously when you buy, you'll take the money out of the lifetime ISA. Will you continue to invest?
So I had a lifetime ISA, which obviously you can put £4,000 in every single year. But then when I got to the point that I earned enough that I could put more than £4,000 every year, I then opened a stocks and shares ISA as well. So I had 2 pots, and it means that now when I buy, I can take all the money out of both accounts, or if I actually don't need all of the money for the deposit, I can then leave a bit in my stocks and shares ISA and keep that growing and keep adding to it over time, or I can take everything out and just put money back in.
I'm so jealous every time I speak to you about this, because you at 22, you were everything that I was not at 22. When I was 22, I said this to you the other day, I had an actual shopping addiction. Like, I would spend all of my money in Zara. When I first moved to London, I was on a grad scheme and I worked in Knightsbridge, and there was this, I think it's the best Zara in London. There's something about it, it's magical. And I would just go in there and spend all of this money that I didn't have. I ended up spending money on credit cards, overdrafts. I was so kind of taken with the idea that I had this salary that actually I didn't really pay attention to what the actual salary was.
I think that's a big thing. And going into your overdraft as well, I think I've never gone into
You've never done it?
I've never gone into my overdraft. I've always made sure that I have kind of a buffer. And I guess I have, from a really young age, I made sure that I had an awareness of how much I was earning, how much was coming in, and also whether I could afford something, and if I actually needed it. I think there's various rules that people follow. It could be like wait a week or wait a year, and if you still want something, buy it. But I do think there is something for just checking that you actually do need that thing. I'm quite good at being frugal. Most of my clothes I buy second hand. I'm quite good at waiting to buy something or finding it second hand.
Packed lunches, you're very good at packed lunches.
I know I'm known for, in the Tembo office, for bringing in food, which obviously it's so easy to just go and get something from Pret or go get something from Greggs, but most people will spend like £5-7, which doesn't sound that much, but £5-7 every single day, that adds up like another £100 to your food bill for the month. Whereas because I was just bringing in leftovers from the dinner before, it was healthier and way cheaper. And it meant I could just, every little bit helps. And I think that's where people sometimes go wrong.
Okay, so set the scene. You are 22, you've just moved to London, and you've decided that you're going to start saving your house deposit. You've opened a lifetime ISA. How did you don't have a shopping addiction?
No.
You're not using your overdrafts. You're squeaky clean. How did you set the target of how much you wanted to save? Did you already have a property price in mind?
I did, because I knew I always eventually wanted to move back north where my family's from. And so I looked at kind of rough average house prices around there, which depending on where you go, it's probably between like, for a first time buyer home, it could be like 200 to 300 grand. So I knew for like a 10% deposit, which is a good figure to aim for, I needed at least 20 to 30k, which is a lot of money. And so I was like, right, okay, I might be buying with someone else in the future, but I also might not. So I want, as an independent woman, I wanted to make sure that I definitely could do that by myself, just for my own sanity. And I did have to be really, really frugal and really quite strict with myself. But there were ways that you can do it. So for example, I lived with my sister for the first couple of years I was in London, and we lived in Lewisham, which I absolutely loved. But everyone else I knew was in Clapham, which is a much more expensive part of London. And my friends were paying £200, £300 more than me in rent because they were where everyone wanted to be. Whereas that meant I could save that bit, and I might have to take like a slightly longer bus to go see them, but it was worth the sacrifice. And I actually also really liked where I lived. And I like packed lunches, I would do things like that. If I ever got, I think another thing that people do particularly early on is that they change their lifestyle when they earn more, which I completely get. You know, if you come, particularly like London or Manchester, where they can be quite expensive cities, and you start at, you know, bottom of the ladder, when you start, you get that first pay rise, you're like, excellent, I can start doing this and start doing that. And it's so tempting to spend more. But if you actually keep your lifestyle relatively similar, all that extra money you can then save, because all those additional things, they make you happier slightly, but not as much as you think. It's all kind of, the grass is greener on the other side. So if you just kind of almost keep your wants and needs in check, and, you know, still spend, and still, like, it's not like you have to live under a rock, but just not spend ridiculous amounts or not change everything, you can put that money extra aside, and it makes such difference over a couple of years.
Can you think of anything like an event, a holiday, something that your friends were doing that you were like, I feel like I'm missing out because of this, or did it never feel?
Oh no, it felt like that quite a lot. A lot of my friends would go to like nicer gyms than me, or they'd go out more than me, or they'd be going on kind of big holidays that I love travelling and I would love to have gone on, but they cost so much money. So I would go on slightly cheaper holidays, or I'd say, you know, I'd love to do that with you, but maybe in a couple of years' time, which can feel like a real sacrifice, but those friends aren't going anywhere, and they knew that I was trying to do this. And I think the other thing that I really appreciated, I've got friends who earn a lot more than me, and when you've got that environment, it's so easy to feel like you have to keep up with them. But those friends also, all they wanted to do was hang out. They just wanted to socialise. They weren't fussed about going to the most expensive bar. So we just made sure that when we socialised, every now and then we'd go out, and then we'd also do pizza nights at someone's house. So it's still socialising, still having fun. You're not sacrificing your social life, but you're not having to spend 40, 50, 60 quid on a night out that could have cost you £10. And I think that's when you look at friendships and money, it can be quite difficult sometimes, but you know, you just want to spend time with your friends. You don't have to go out. Yeah,
I definitely agree, and I can empathise with that 100%. Like a lot of my friends who work in finance or on like commission-based roles, you do notice that kind of gap open up between what you earn and what your friends earn, and it can be tempting to just get sucked into it.
Yeah, but they can also spend all the money. I think the thing that makes me kind of feel better when I used to get really worried about money when I first started, was that someone could be earning double what I do, but they could also spend double what I do.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people get stuck, is they think that their wealth is reflected in their salary.
Yeah.
Well, actually your wealth is reflected in your savings and your saving power. So don't worry if someone earns more than you, because they could be literally pouring all of it down the drain.
Yeah. It's like it's how you spend it that determines how wealthy you are.
Yeah.
Because you could just be pouring that all down the drain at like expensive restaurants and things that provide no return. It's just like a momentary
It's like, don't believe
enjoyment.
Instagram. Just don't believe Instagram. It's all a highlight reel.
Yeah.
And I guess recognising what you actually need and what's actually important to you. And just, the grass is not always greener.
Yeah. Okay, so you got your deposit now. 30k?
Yeah.
Amazing. In 4 years. What are you going to do? Are you going to buy soon? Are you wanting to hold off for a bit?
So I am going to hold off for a bit. So I'm currently in a rental. So I've got about another 11 months to go in that. So probably the back end of this year I'll start looking, because you need to, 3 to 6 months is normally the timeline, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. But I want to make sure it's the right place for me and the right area for me and everything else. So hopefully kind of spring next year I'll be moving into my own place, which will be amazing, because I've rented for so long, and I've got plenty of renting horror stories about damp and mice and all that. I know all the rest of it, and I am so looking forward to having my own place and making that my home. I think that you can't put a value on that.
You are literally the poster girl for buying your first place. It's like, it's just like the dream journey, like 22, just like set how much you want to save, begin meticulously saving, living within your means, not using your overdraft, saved up by the time you're 26.
Yeah. But then it sounds great when you phrase it like that. But I think when you're in that moment, there was plenty of times when I was like, I just want to spend all my money. It's summer's coming around, I want loads of outfits. It was so hard at times, but I think keeping that goal in mind is so important. Yeah. And then now I'm here, I'm like, great, I can get that home that I want and now have all these things. And I haven't had to sacrifice every element of my life to get there. It's just about being clever about your spending, and I guess being honest with yourself sometimes. Okay, parting words. One bit of advice that you would give to somebody who's just starting out on their journey? Don't get overwhelmed by how far away the goal feels. Just focus on the couple of steps in front of you. Most useful app or service that you use, and it can't be Tembo. Ooh, that's quite difficult. So obviously it was before I joined Tembo, so I use a different LISA provider. So I guess... Well, you can't mention them. No, but any LISA provider, preferably Tembo, but genuinely just use a LISA. It is the most useful thing you could do for your home. And if you get one like Tembo that has like money saving tips, it's a way of educating yourself about how you can save more, how you can budget, how investing works. I guess just getting clued up on the whole process. Splitwise is also really good for making sure your friends pay you back. Splitwise is amazing. You know, my most frustrating Splitwise experience though, and I'm worried that this friend is now going to watch this video. A friend of mine after a group holiday put on a bag of ice. There were 12 of us. A bag of ice. It was like everyone owed like 4p. Wow. Would you have added that? No, I'm not that scringy. That's not how you save a 30k deposit. 4p extra to that deposit. Great. Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing all of your advice. I wish that I'd listened to this when I was 22. It's okay. And excited to see you move into your place. Thank you. So bye.